flesh from Byrne.
Director Sean Byrne brings us Dangerous Animals. And this is a kind of shark attack movie, sort of. Now, I often see critiques of shark films, shark attack movies, saying there's no original ideas. Once you've seen one, you've seen them all. And that's fair criticism. I mean, there are only so many permeations of lost out at sea and attacked by sharks that you can possibly get. But every so often you'll get a movie that tries to throw a little bit something extra into the mix. And this is what Dangerous Animals does. So, Dangerous Animals is actually more about a serial killer who uses sharks as his weapon. So think as Jason Voorhees might use a machete, Michael Myers might use a kitchen knife. This guy uses sharks as his weapon, but he is the one making the decisions, calling the shots, selecting his victims and actually doing the crime. So what's the story here? Well, primarily we focus on this young woman who is a drifter out in Australia who just kind of wants to surf. She ends up meeting this kind of guy, they have a little bit of a connection, but not long after that she's abducted by Courtney's character, who is a prolific serial killer who likes to kind of torture his victims and feed them to the sharks. Videotaping it to watch later and enjoy. He's completely unapologetic about it, and it looks like he's had quite a lot of victims at this point. But our main protagonist, this Zephyr, her name is, she might prove a little bit tougher to kill. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So, let's talk about it. So, if you are a shark fan, there is a reasonable amount of kind of shark act, a reasonable amount of underwater photography, which is very good, I have to say. Almost, the underwater photography actually almost looks like it's from a documentary. It's that sort of like, you know, crisp and clear. And there's some pretty brutal stuff in this movie, not only with the actual kind of shark attacks, but there's some pretty good scenes here involving the sharks. But there's not tons. This isn't a shark movie primarily. As I say, the sharks are a weapon. Our main threat is a serial killer. So if you are a fan of serial killer and shark movies, then boy, this is the movie for you. But the shark scenes are done very well. They actually use a lot of kind of actual footage of sharks in some sequences. But when we do have our more up close shark attacks, I've got to say the VFX look good. You know, we don't get those kind of hero shots of the shark, not a lot of them anyway, but it actually kind of, I think, works in this movie's favour to kind of keep them as this kind of in the water, mysterious kind of like, you can't quite see where they're going to come from. We know that they're there, we'll see the kind of the fins and the kind of the back of them, we'll see glimpses here and there, and then, you know, you will get the odd kind of shot of the sharks and stuff like that, but it's done to good effect. There's no cheesy looking CGI sharks in this one. And obviously, as I say, this is primarily a serial killer movie, and I think Courtney makes a very charismatic and memorable serial killer with a kind of a unique modus operandi. And he's not dumb character. You know, he's a bit of a brute, but he's certainly not dumb. I mean, obviously the sharks are eating his victims. He chooses his victims quite carefully. Those whom, you know, don't have much in the way of kind of friends or family, so people won't they go missing and stuff like that. So he's not an idiot, and obviously the sharks are kind of eating the kind of the evidence and stuff like that, or at least partially. So, you know, the character is brutal and, you know, uncompromising, but he's not, you know, an idiot. And as I would also apply that to our main female protagonist as well, Zephyr, and even the love interest as well. All our trio of main characters don't seem like idiots. They actually seem quite capable. Zephyr, our female protagonist, is actually quite a capable woman, who is not portrayed to be like a Mary Sue, but she kind of uses her you know, her wiles to kind of try and get out of kind of situations, and she's not overpowering Jai Courtney, who is like massive and can easily outmuscle her, but she uses like, you know, implement and basically her agileness to kind of try and you know, outsmart him or get away from him in sort of certain situations. So I think every character here, for the most part, seems pretty kind of clever and able to use their kind of wits to their advantage. There's one scene involving our male love interest where I think it's a little bit coincidental, to be honest, when he's kind of tracking down what has happened to his newfound love interest. But that aside, everything else seems, I think, quite kind of plausible. The movie actually plays a little bit like a kind of Hostel or Saw film in a way, where we have our antagonist, Jai Courtney's character, really getting off on the pleasure of seeing people being devoured by sharks, and then kind of rewatching them, the tapes when he's kind of having his dinner and stuff like that. And there is these long drawn out sequences where he's kind of dangling his victims like over the boat, waiting for the kind of the sharks to, you know, eat them and things like that, and kind of causing them to kind of panic and stuff. So there's a real kind of like element of torture porn here to a degree. And I will say, although I wouldn't say this is the most gory movie ever, there's even one moment that actually made me flinch in this movie, because it was like, oh blimey, that was some harsh beans. So it's fairly sort of grounded in regards to its kind of level of brutality, violence on screen, and the actual kind of like the gore and stuff. In fact, there's some kind of, when we see the kind of the aftermath, for example, we just see body parts floating around. There's one sequence where he kills one woman, and there's just like her torso just floating under the water, and we can see it from an underwater shot. I mean, it's very gruesome, but it's very well done. I think the acting is also, as I say, I think Jai Courtney probably kind of steals the show as our antagonist, our serial killer, who's, you know, very kind of, as I say, a very charismatic character. You know, he's almost a little bit channeling his kind of Captain Boomerang from the Suicide Squad mode here, kind of somewhat sort of out there, you know, sort of character traits and things like this. It's a very taut thriller, and there are a few kind of surprises and kind of things what you think are going to go a certain way, and some failed attempts as well. There's a couple of sequences where someone will come up with a plan to do something and it doesn't work. So not everything kind of goes to plan. So I thought this was a very strong film overall. Do I have any issues with this movie? I feel our kind of backstory of our serial killer, Jai Courtney's character, is underdeveloped, to be honest. We don't really know why he's doing it. He explains to one character that he was attacked by a shark when he was younger. So, and he's got these scars, so we can understand why he's maybe obsessed with sharks. We don't really ever know why he's actually killing people, what has led him to this, what he's actually doing it for. It certainly doesn't appear to be sexual in nature. He's not like sexually getting off on it, which obviously a lot of serial killers do this sort of thing for a kind of sexual gratification that they can't get otherwise. But that does not seem to be the case with Jai Courtney's character, and it's not really clear why he's doing it. I mean, you could just say, you know, why do serial killers do anything? They're just mad. And I guess you could say that, but I do feel you had to have, well, it should have really given you some idea what has kind of led him to this point, because it just doesn't give you anything, ultimately. He just is doing this, and by all accounts, he's been doing this for a kind of a while here. There are a few kind of minor points where I felt the story was a little bit silly. Zephyr, our main character, seems to be able to swim at lightning speed. There's a sequence where the boyfriend sort of goes looking for Zephyr and sort of finds her van, which has been abandoned, and he calls her, and he finds her sort of phone, but then when he reports it to the police, he doesn't mention that he's kind of just found her phone like lying around or whatever, and that surely would have sort of be a bit more suspicious. There's a sequence where Zephyr, our female protagonist, is kind of tied up, and she's got like tape over her mouth, but her arms are kind of like sort of tied above her head. But there's no reason why she couldn't just lift her head up and like tear the tape off her mouth because she could call for help and stuff like that. I mean, it's just like, well, you know, you could easily she would have easily been able to read. It's one of those kind of movie decisions, I sort of guess. And there's a couple of things I think you could arguably put down to a character was panicking and they didn't think that. You know, there's a sequence where our serial killer played by Courtney kind of knocked over, and then she kind of runs away instead of kind of like trying to kind of finish the job, things like that. So there's a few kind of minor quibbles, and as I say, there's a sequence. The only thing I think was completely really unbelievable was how our boyfriend sort of tracks this character down or finds out about this kind of like this boatyard, and that seems a little bit far-fetched to me. But outside of that, I actually think it was a relatively kind of grounded movie. So it's a fun one, and as I say, maybe not the full-on shark movie that some would expect, and as I say, more a serial killer film. But I would say there's enough shark action in it to satisfy, you know, maybe shark fans. But it is a serial killer first, a shark film second. But I do think it could appeal to both fans, you know, both genres, of you know, fans of both of these genres. And overall, it's a strong film, strong character, strong performances, strong effects, good sense of tension. I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. I really, really enjoyed this one. It's certainly one of the stronger shark-based movies I've seen in a long time. Have you seen it? What did you think? Leave me a comment, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.